Hey YouTube, Rob again. Today I'm just doing a sort of a quick movie update. Just got four movies to sort of show you. I haven't sort of been watching a hell of a lot recently. Been fairly busy with work and other things. But I have sort of managed to sort of watch these four here, which I'm going to show you. And I thought I might just make a sort of a very quick sort of video about just sort of what I've been watching and just what I've sort of picked up recently. So I got we've got two Australian films, and then I got two foreign films. One's sort of French, and the other one's German. So we get into it. Okay, the first one's one I think from 2010, called The Hunter. Now I did do a review of this a long time ago on my channel. A pretty terrible review. I think I watched it this morning. Pretty terrible review of it. But this is a film that I really do like. I think I actually liked it. I really liked it the first time, and even more so the second time that I watched it. When I watched it the other day, obviously an Australian film, sort of shot in a place called Tasmania, a very sort of scenic area of Australia. Essentially, the basic premise is we've got William Dafoe here. He's sort of hired by a sort of a big corporation, big sort of biotech corporation, a bit like perhaps the Umbrella Corporation, perhaps from the Resident Evil movies, maybe, and the games, of course. He's sort of hired, he's sort of sent to Tasmania to sort of track down the last remaining Tasmanian tiger, which is sort of deemed to be extinct, many, many years ago, sort of hunted to extinction at the turn of the century. His sort of job, is sort of go and find this tiger and extract the venom from it and bring the venom back. Bring the venom back as like a sort of a biotech weapon, which they can use. So essentially that's sort of the premise to it. He sort of goes there and he sort of gets sort of lodging at sort of this sort of in the bush at this sort of woman's house and her house and her kids. And he sort of goes there to sort of be, just to go and do this job, get in and get out, type thing. But he sort of sort of gets lumbered with this sort of family, I guess, and so you think he sort of spends, instead of doing his job, he sort of stays with them, fixing the generator and fixing up things around the house, and because the woman's very grief stricken because she's lost her husband recently in the bush, and so she's a bit of a mess and, not really looking after the kids very well, sort of thing. I kind of get the impression maybe the whole film's a bit of a metaphor for something else, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite that smart enough to sort of work that out. But definitely just, a great film. Also stars Sam Neill and Frances O'Connor. Great film. Second film's another Australian film. It's recently sort of picked up. Heard a few people talking about it, and I reckon it was a really good movie. Got Beneath Hill 60, which is sort of like a war drama film, I think from 2010, if I remember. Another just great film, great film. Just really did like this one. I couldn't really find anything that I didn't particularly like about it. Normally something, some small niggling thing that I might not necessarily like in a movie, but this is just, very much a perfect movie. For me. Based on a true story of, what's the guy's name? Oliver Woodard. Sort of set, the First World War. His background, he's a miner, and he sort of goes off to war and, sort of ends up going into the trenches. The idea is they're going to sort of dig a tunnel, from their trench, basically to the German side, and basically blow up the trenches, sort of thing, from underground type thing. But just, great performances from it. Great sort of, just the way it was sort of shot, and for sort of mud-filled trenches and rain and just really horrible conditions, and just really sort of authentic type of scenery to it, I thought, and good sort of story, and very sort of intense, on the edge of your seat type stuff. And these people, real people that went to war and, fought for our freedom and stuff. And I couldn't stand to be you know, in some of these trenches and sort of go through what some of these people went through, that'd be just horrific, and I'd just totally, you know, freak out and just wouldn't be able to deal with it. I don't think I can't understand how some these people, you know, in all the wars, how they sort of, you know, put up with it and how they sort of survive. That's that sort of thing. But yeah, definitely is a great war film and great drama, and probably one of the, you know, another one of the best Australian films we've ever seen. One of the sort of the best, perhaps, war films I've ever sort of seen as well. Yeah, just really sort of like the, you know, the war scenes, and also like the sort of flashbacks to Oliver's, you know, previous life. You know, his girlfriend and his family, old traditions that they used to, you know, sort of like you know, asking your girlfriend's father if you can marry her, you know, type thing. Which that sort of stuff doesn't necessarily happen a lot these days, you know, stuff like that, you know, type thing. But anyway, that's another great film. Okay, so the next two are for sort of foreign films. First one's here is a French film from 2007. It's actually directed by an American person, but it's actually sort of originally it was going to be Gary Oldman, or they're thinking perhaps getting Johnny Depp to do it, but essentially they've already decided to, because it is based on sort of a real life sort of French person, so they did really decide to sort of, you know, set it in France. And the film's called the Diving Bell and the Butterfly. A very interesting title. Another great film that I really did enjoy. You know, sort of just I've heard the title before, because it's a very sort of unique title, and I just sort of saw it there in a second-hand shop, picked it up, and not really knowing, you know, just bought it without really knowing all that much about it, and was, you know, it definitely wasn't anything like I was expecting it to be, even though I didn't know what it was going to be about. It's sort of based on the true life story of Jean Doe. I think I don't think that's his full name, but anyway. And I don't know, I don't necessarily want to perhaps sort of say too much about it, because I did it really did help the film for me, sort of, you know, watching it without knowing anything about it, what's going to happen. So essentially, you sort of get this, you sort of wake up, sort of like a first-person view of this person, and you sort of start to think, well, he's been in some sort of accident, because he sort of wakes up in a hospital, and everything's sort of fuzzy, and he can't see, and he keeps sort of blinking, and everything's sort of out of focus, and which is a great effect, and I really did sort of, you know, like that sort of first-person shot to it, you know, for the first part of the film. And he's sort of, you know, sort of the doctors sort of come in and sort of, he's basically got, let's say he's got like, what they call locked-in syndrome, which essentially means you're completely paralysed basically from the neck down type thing, and, you know, he can't talk, and he can't sort of move much. He can sort of move his head slightly, and he can blink. I think his left eye, that's pretty much the only thing that sort of moves, basically. The only thing he can move. So that's sort of how he sort of ends up communicating with people, sort of by blinking his eye, type thing, and sort of spelling out the alphabet type thing. So essentially, yeah, just sort of this film was just sort of becoming aware of, you know, he sort of becomes aware of, you know, what's trying to piece together what happened to him, and trying to you know, obviously very frustrated, trying to communicate with his, well, blinking his eye, which is, you know, a very hard task. Reflecting on his past and his life, and, you know, I guess when he was, you know, fully bodied type thing, and he sort of gets his friends and family sort of come to visit him, and, you know, his ex-wife and his current wife and his children and his friends, and just sort of them, you know, him, you know, I don't know, he sort of, some ways, you know, tell them to piss off type thing, because he doesn't really want them to, he doesn't want to see them, he doesn't want them to sort of see him look like this, you know, type thing. Some ways, I guess he's got to sort of, in some ways he sort of comes to terms with it, but I think in other ways he really doesn't come to terms with it. He's still, you know, very sort of grumpy and angry, and because he sort of follows, he was very much, I think I'm not quite sure, I think he was something to do with like fashion or something. So his previous life was very much about visuals and beautiful women and, you know, type things. I'm not quite sure that's quite right, but that's the impression I got. He was very much in some sort of fashion or some sort of very visual sort of movement, type thing, if that sort of makes sense, before, his previous life. And now he's, like this. So it's very much a direct contrast to what he did before. Yeah, just a really good film, I thought. The only thing, I mean, if I had to make, sort of said before, I did the first sort of, say, 40 minutes of the film, I did sort of like the, as I mentioned before, the sort of the, sort of the first person angle and the very, blurry vision, camera, and the, very disorientation type thing, and only sort of seeing what he can sort of see out of one eye type thing, which sort of went over this for like 40 minutes, and I think after a little time of that did sort of get a bit, you sort of got a bit sick of that, so I did kind of get a bit bored with that towards the end of the thing. But then once you sort of, we do eventually get sort of see, a bit more of the environment around him, people's perspective of him actually looking, of them actually looking at him type thing, whereas before it was just him looking around and that's all we could see. I knew what he saw, type thing. So that was perhaps a little bit boring, perhaps, and but definitely just really, I found it in some ways a very sort of engaging film, and very interesting sort of, relationships with these sort of, his friends and family coming to visit him, and basically just him, I suppose, trying to adjust, I guess, to this. And essentially the big thing is that he did manage to sort of write a book. He sort of got someone to sort of, he sort of blinked out the words and someone wrote down, he did actually sort of manage to write this, book. I think about his thoughts, I suppose, and there is some sort of very sort of poetic type scenes in the film, I think. But definitely, I thought it was a really good film. A lot of people go on, IMDb, they sort of mixed reviews about it, and so that was very boring and no real point to it and stuff. But I mean, it is sort of based on a real life person, so it's not a Hollywood movie. I guess they've tried to go a bit more realistic with it. But yeah, great film. I really did enjoy it, and I definitely would recommend it. The next film is actually a film I've watched a few times before over the years. I think it came out 2000. Basically, because this is one of the first films I sort of watched when I sort of first discovered, as an adult, sort of, foreign films. I'd watched Run Lola Run with Franca Potente, I think that's how you pronounce her name, which I really did like that film, and the film that the director made after that film, and it stars Franca again. It's called The Princess and the Warrior, 2000, I think it came out, 2 years after Run Lola Run. It's one of those sort of, as another sort of film, I've sort of been watching a lot of those recently, very sort of slow burning, not much sort of happening type of films. Essentially you've got Sissy here, played by Franco. She like works in a mental hospital as like one of the nurses, and you sort of get the impression that her life's very sort of dull and not very eventful, and in some ways sort of the patients sort of rely on her a fair bit, and that's basically just her, her whole life sort of thing, sort of working all day and then sort of, in the same building, sleeping in her little room type thing, and, then doing the same thing every day, type thing. And, but essentially basically the thing is she sort of goes out one day with one of the patients for a walk, and she sort of gets hit by a bus. She sort of gets, knocked underneath the bus and sort of lying underneath the bus, sort of waiting for the, the paramedics to come. And through a few events, this guy sort of crawls under the bus with her and sort of finds out in there that she's not breathing. So he's sort of it's a very sort of gross scene where he finds a straw and then gets his pocket knife and cuts a hole in her throat, then puts the straw in there and then sucks out the blood so she can sort of breathe. A bit gross, that scene. And then he sort of, disappears. And she sort of, comes out of a hospital a few weeks later or a few months later, and in some ways becomes perhaps a little bit, she wants to sort of find him again. She sort of gets perhaps a bit obsessed with the idea perhaps that there was, that there was a reason why he was there, and maybe he's there to perhaps change her life, and maybe things are going to be a bit different from now on, type thing. So she sort of, I don't want to spoil too much, but she does sort of eventually track him down, and he does sort of reject her type thing, because he's got a lot of his own sort of problems going on at the moment, and but they do sort of, you know, their lives do in the end do sort of tangle up, you know, type thing. Once I say too much after that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel that I already did like, and very sort of yeah, as if not a hell of a lot happens with it, but it's just, I don't know, it's sort of very interesting, and the ends the end's very much like a bit sort of surreal, and but yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I just, yeah, I don't know, it's like the performances of it, and some interesting characters in it, and a very sort of I think perhaps you've perhaps got to watch a few times, I think, to sort of kind of understand what's sort of happening. There's a lot of you sort of find out, yeah, you know, certain characters are not necessarily what you think they are, you know, in the beginning of the film. But yeah, just it's another, yeah, a good film. Definitely like sort of foreign films. Just, yeah, very good film. That's my, yeah, just a quick sort of just reviews of just what I've been watching recently, and just a few pickups that I've made.